Good morning, and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Paul Gibb, your service leader for the day, as Reverend Lydia is on vacation. I'm joined today by Service Associate Karen Griglock. Julie Morris and Daniel Fields are providing music, and our tech team consists of Kathy Partridge, Larry Sherwood, and Mary Stackpole. As I say the welcome words today, I invite you to really take them in and imagine how they might change the way you interact with people you are just getting to know. You are all welcome here today, and all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes that come together in your uniqueness. You are welcome here. And all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. And the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. And all the ways you make your living and the places you are from, you are welcome here. With all of the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long you are away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and, if possible, willing hands. We welcome you today.
We acknowledge that the land surrounding us is the stolen territory of the Arapaho people, and that many native peoples roamed freely on this land for millennia before the arrival of white settlers. If you're new here, we are really glad that you found us, and hope that in this community, whether you're with us here in person or virtually on Zoom, you can experience the warmth and the love of this congregation. Each Sunday can look a little different here, so come back a few times to really get to know us. We have many opportunities during the week for social interaction and spiritual growth. Those on Zoom can check out the links in the chat to help you better get connected. Those in person can find our newcomer form on the QR code in the back of the hymnal, or you can stop by the welcome table out in the foyer to better get connected. Everybody on Zoom is welcome to stay for casual conversation following the service. If you're here in person today, you are welcome to coffee hour over in the fellowship. And if you're joining us on Zoom, feel free to greet each other in the Zoom chat. And if you're a newcomer, let us know so that we can greet you. We really like to know who is among us on a Sunday. For those of you in the sanctuary, just take a couple of minutes. Please take a moment, greet your neighbor, say hi to a new face. Nope. If you have a chalice at home, feel free to light yours with us as Paul lights our fellowship chalice. And so that we know where all of the chalices are lit, please write in the chat, chalice lit in the name of your town. The rest of you, if you could please say the words along with me as Paul lights our chalice. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I'm going to ring our bowl one more time. Just listen to it until you can't hear it anymore, and let yourself just center and just be here today.
Our opening words are by Nicole McKay. We gather to remember those who could not grow old, and those forced to grow old long before their time. We gather to mourn and grieve with one another all of our losses, the people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been. We gather to do the hard work of facing the difficult realities of our present and our past. Where there is conflict, violence, war, and hatred. We gather to hold space for silence as we try to make meaning of our history. To help us work for peace and justice today. We gather to rekindle our source of hope for our future by recognizing in one another our shared humanity as we join in a concerted commitment for a better tomorrow. We gather because we need community to do all of this holy work.
Good morning. We have an opportunity to sing together. So we're going to be in the gray hymnal today, 101, Abide with Me. So the gray hymnal, 101, Abide with Me. Please rise in body or spirit. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, still with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. Swift to its close, ebbs out life's little day. As joys grow dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changest not, abide with me. I fear no foe, with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no weight, and tears no bitterness. Where is death's sting? Where grave thy victory? I triumph still if thou abide with me.
So this Sunday is the final Sunday of the month, and this month's theme was creativity. It's also the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. It is a weekend when we should acknowledge those soldiers who fought in wars and did not come home again. They fought in wars for freedoms, against oppressors, for truth, with lies and with information and misinformation, for egos and against egos, and for everything else that the human condition has to offer. We mourn for those who never came home, and for those who went away and brought themselves home again as different people, who struggle with who they were and who they are now. So for the month of creativity, I don't wish to give you my own short reflection, but to offer up a few poems from soldiers who didn't make it home again, in their memory as we honor them. I have a poem from the Civil War by Captain Alfred English Dobby, who lived from 1840 to 1863 of Camden, South Carolina. Dobby fought in the 2nd South Carolina Infantry, and he mailed this poem home to his wife, Elizabeth McMillan Dobby, on January 22nd, 1963, the year of his death. The poem is about Elizabeth's letters to him, which he burns after reading. Farewell, sweet messengers of love, thy heaven-like missions filled. On my heart thy sweet words are left, in my bosom joy instilled. Thou must perish in the flame, a sacrifice to love's demands. For should the vandal in this strife stand o'er my body slain, ne'er shall touch the sacred page or coarsely mock affection's name. I have one from World War I. In Flanders Fields was written on May 3rd, 1915, after presiding over the funeral of a friend and fellow soldier, the Lieutenant Alex Helmer. John McCrae wrote this. He died as Colonel John McCrae on January 13th, 1918, due to illness made worse from wartime health complications. And while not written by an American soldier, you have to wonder how many other soldiers wrote things for their friends that are lost to time. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard among the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. And the last one I have this morning is from World War II. And this poem was written by squadron bomber Alfred Burford Sleep. Before he left with his squadron on a mission, he wrote this poem and left it to be sent to his mother should he not return. He did not. He died on August 30th, 1944. And the poem was called Last Landing. Off this earth I leave behind and soar God's heavens, till sun and stars I find, and fence the towering clouds with others of my kind. Fear not if I should lose my way, nor keep sad hearts for my returning day. 'Tis that I flew the heavens too high, and reached God's guiding hand, and heard him answer to my cry, Your journey's done. Now land.
Each week, we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and this community by giving half of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. Today's half plate is for CIRC, Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition. BVUUF is a longtime member of this coalition of immigrant, labor, interfaith, youth, and ally organizations with the goal of building a unified statewide voice to improve the lives of immigrants and refugees in Colorado and the United States. CIRC achieves this mission through nonpartisan civic engagement, public education, and advocacy to win fair, humane, and workable public policies. You can text your donation at the number on the screen, or if you are at the fellowship today, place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. Please give generously, as you so often do. As our musical reflection begins, we invite you to reflect upon and write into the chat if you're on Zoom your answer to this question. What has Memorial Day meant to you, your family, and your ancestors?
for the Colorado Immigrants' Rights Coalition and this fellowship in the work of bringing love, reason, compassion, and justice to this world, we dedicate these offerings.
What do we think about when we pass by a veterans cemetery? Probably most of us don't pay much attention. The radio is still on with our favorite music, and we're thinking about the day's tasks or about how we're late for that appointment. And besides, most of us try to avoid downers whenever we can. But maybe in that veteran cemetery are some hidden revelations about who we are and what we have to be grateful for in our lives. When I last visited a veterans cemetery, I looked around to see if any names inscribed on the markers were similar to or the same as my own. And then came the thought that this or that grave might very easily have been mine, or that if one of my ancestors' names was there, I might not exist. Pretty sobering. But it's one thing to say it could have been me, and quite another to say thank you to those who did serve, those who knew so much more pain, both physical and emotional, than most of us will experience in a lifetime. And as I look at the graves, I think about the Normandy invasion. What would have happened if those soldiers had not climbed that hill and overtaken those artillery positions? Would I and everyone I know have ended up a victim of a German victory and maybe even wound up in a concentration camp? I was born in 1945, around the time both the Germans and the Japanese were defeated. But in my family, World War II was still going on for the next 40 years. You see, my father worked on the Manhattan Project and spent the rest of his life being defensive about it. My mother, who had gone to a Quaker college and had become an ardent pacifist, insisted that only by getting rid of the weapon my father helped create would we have any chance of human survival. My position growing up was that both parents were partly right, partly wrong. They grabbed onto two opposite sides of an unsolvable riddle. And so I felt terribly torn throughout my youth. As I've grown up and lived a long life, however, I've discovered that my parents were simply expressing the ambivalence of all human beings about the subject of war, an ambivalence that for many of us was greatly intensified during wars in which our country appeared to be the aggressor. That ambivalence is one reason that when we pass a veteran cemetery, we don't often look twice. We don't want to be reminded of that which might stir our deepest confusion. The worst thing we do, I believe, and I am as guilty of this as anyone, is to assume that the living veteran, or the veteran in the cemetery, is or was some kind of war hawk. This represents a failure to see the inherent worth and dignity of every person, one of our UU principles. The truth is that they are just as human as the rest of us, and just as unique. History just hit them a lot harder than it may have hit us. Stereotyping is a way of dismissing, and we would all do well to notice when, consciously or unconsciously, we start moving in that direction. We also tend to forget that by far the majority of soldiers did not go into war voluntarily. They were drafted. And, except for the 2 world wars and for a brief time in the late 1960s when there was a draft lottery, college students seldom had to serve. In other words, being part of an educated elite that would be most likely to go on to higher paying jobs, made a person less likely to be pulled into involuntary military service. And then When draft deferments ended and were replaced by a draft lottery, how many more of us might have been drafted if our number had been called up? Consciously or unconsciously, we can all too easily look down on those souls, forgetting to see them as hapless victims of humanity's penchant for polarization and retaliation. They were not monsters. They were humans like us, the beloved sons and daughters of mothers and fathers like ours. This month's Soul Matters theme is creativity, and I cannot help but think about what those veterans in the cemetery might have created had they survived the horrible wars. Who knows how many books, pieces of music, pieces of art, movies, and the like might be buried in that cemetery, and how much love for partners and offspring and friends. But the truth is that many of these veterans actually did help create something, namely the future of our country during the many intervals of time when our future was uncertain. In some, but not all of the wars in which they fought, they kept us from coming under the control of a Hitler or Hirohito or an even worse dictator. May we thank them for their help in creating the world as we know it. Carl Sandburg wrote a very memorable poem that you may have heard or read. It's called Grass. Pile the bodies high at Austerlitz and Waterloo. Shovel them under and let me work. I am the grass. I cover all. And pile them high at Gettysburg, and pile them high at Ypres and Verdun. Shovel them under and let me work. 2 years, 10 years, and passengers asked the conductor, "What place is this? Where are we now?" I am the grass. Let me work. The poet is telling us on one level that, yes, time heals, or at least covers up. But on another level, he is reminding us of the pains of war, bringing them to light. The poet does not mean we should simply let grass cover over the pains of the past, forgetting them entirely. I believe it is healthy to bring up those pains, just not to dwell on them. That can be a real balancing act, because the reality is that the pains are never entirely healed within us. If we bring them up all the time, we will be consumed by them. If we never bring them up, they may well fester inside us. What we need to take away from our examination of life's painful side, I believe, is a recognition of our own universal human vulnerability. And when we recognize that, then we can begin to be even more thankful for what life has given us. Thankful for what others have sacrificed so that we might be here today in this room, singing, holding hands, being in an extended family, breathing, feeling, laughing, crying, loving, being alive. In a symphony, the happiest and most joyous movement almost always occurs immediately after the saddest. This is because the light of day always seems so much brighter after we emerge from darkness. May we experience a little of that darkness today. And as we emerge again into the daylight, may we be all the more grateful. Let us close with a few moments of silent meditation. Amen.
We will now be singing from the Gray Hymnal once more, 159, This Is My Song. 159 in the gray hymnal. Please rise in body or spirit. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, a country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true as high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and the skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
And now I invite us into our time of community connection, our time of sacred sharing. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to share a joy or a concern, please type it into the chat window, sending it to everyone. And let us know what is in your heart today. Karen will read aloud what you share, and I will add a stone to our sacred waters on your behalf. If you're in the sanctuary today, you can come up front, share your joy or concern using the microphone, and add a stone to the waters. You're always free to add a stone in silence if that is your preference. Wherever you are, please tell us your name and where you live, and then briefly share your concern or your joy this morning.
And as if you've been around for a while, you know that I am not very good at the prayer thing. So I usually take words from people I think might be wiser at this than I am. So Barbara J. Peskin wrote a poem called Memorial Day Prayer. Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names, in thanksgiving and in anguish, bless the poets and those who mourn. Send peace for the soldiers who did not make the wars, but whose lives were consumed by them. Let strong trees grow above graves far from home, and breathe through the arms of their branches. The earth will swallow your tears while the dead sing no more. never again. Remember me. For the wounded ones and those who received them back, let there be somebody ready when the memories come, when the scars pull and the buried metal moves. And forgiveness for those of us who were not there, for our ignorance. And in us, veterans in a forest of 1,000 fallen promises. Let new leaves of protest grow on our stumps. Give us courage to answer the cry of humanity's pain. And with our bare hands out of full hearts, with all of our intelligence, let us create the peace. Amen and blessed be. Daniel is going to lead us from yet another hymn in your gray hymnal, hymn number 391. That was 391, voice still and small. We're going to sing through it twice, and you all can remain seated.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still we remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still we'll remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
So I have some announcements. BVUUF is in need of service associates for the coming year. I've been asked to do a little testimonial, and here it is. I've been involved in creating Sunday services at all 5 of the UU congregations I've attended since I was 18 years old. And what I've discovered over and over again is that no matter how much anxiety I have about being in front of people, it always disappears the minute I get behind the podium. That is because when I look out at all the people, I always see accepting looks on their faces. Even when they make a goof, as I have, believe it or not, at least once in every service I've ever participated in, I never see a single scowl. I only see smiling, accepting faces, accepting me in my imperfection. So if you have a fear of experiencing stage fright, know that your fright will become less, not more, when you get up in front of this congregation. Karen Griglak is the current leader of our service associates, and she will be happy to talk with you following the service. Continuing with the announcements, every year the congregation votes on our annual budget at a congregational meeting in early June. In preparation for that meeting, please plan to attend one of the budget explainer sessions to review the budget you will be asked to approve. Representatives from the Finance Committee and the Board will be on hand to answer questions, and they will provide a more appropriate format for discussing concerns and getting clarification than at the larger congregational meeting. The last of the explainer sessions is today at 11:30, following the service in the sanctuary here. If you have any questions or concerns, you can also contact Janet Meyer. There she is. President of the Board of Trustees, or Larry Sherwood, member of the Finance Committee. And please do come to the potluck, an annual meeting, next Saturday, June 3rd, from 5 to 8. We get to have a potluck from 5 to 6, like old times. Then the meeting will be from 6 to 8 and available on Zoom as well, at the same Zoom link as the Sunday services and your Connections Weekly. It will be a fun evening with music, sharing, and voting on the budget and on our new slate of officers. You'll need to sign up in advance for the potluck. See this week's Connections to register. For those on Zoom, the link is in the chat. And don't forget to bring your own plates and utensils. And finally, next to the end here, next Friday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. here at the Ship, John Souza and Lisa Lestender will perform an evening of traditional folk music from Scandinavia and Ireland. Their music is an invitation to slow down and connect with what is most authentic. For tickets, see Connections Weekly, the listserv, or the QR codes on posters in the lobby. And now Mary Hill has a few words.
Hi. Oh, it does work. Okay, I just really wanted to not have the service not finished before we mention Ukraine, which it seems to me is the war that's going on now, that we may not have most of our relatives, for most of us may not have our relatives in there, but those are the same issues that have focused so many of the wars and caused so many of the wars. So it just seemed to me like it should be mentioned. So thank you for letting me do this.
And now we extinguish the chalice. Please say the words along with me. We extinguish the chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. So for our benediction, I invite all to join hands, link arms, or touch shoulders. And you may hug yourself if you prefer not to be touched today. We close with the words of Frederick Gillis. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Amen.